Hello, everyone, and welcome into another episode of the Big Blue News Podcast. And sadly, tonight I am not joined by my co-host Nolan Fleming, but today we have a guest on the episode. He is the parent of one of the players on the team and is retired from the Army of 21 years, where he and his wife had 8 combat deployments between them. Please welcome in Tony Geiger, who is the father of defensive back Jalen Geiger at Kentucky. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Chris. Thanks for having me on, brother.
Oh, thank you for joining. I appreciate it. So, before we get into the podcast and talk extensively about sports, how was it like serving in the Army? And did you find your wife while also, serving?
So I know it may sound like a cliche, but it was an absolute honor to serve our country. I joined the Army right out of high school at 18 years old. Even turned 21 in a combat zone years and years ago, of course. Uh, but like I said, I've got a chance to live in 4 different continents, um, 5 combat deployments, and I met my wonderful wife 28 years, almost 29 years ago, in the Army at Fort Hood, Texas, where she served 24 years with 3 combat deployments. So, very grateful for the opportunity to serve. And the best part, I got to meet uh, my wonderful wife and I start our family.
Yeah. Did you also have another favorite part other than meeting your wife while serving?
Yes, the great thing, one of the good things about the military, other than serving, is to be able to see different parts of the world and then put things here in perspective. Like sometimes we complain sometimes naturally, but when you go see starving kids in Somalia or Bosnia or Iraq or Hungary or Croatia, etc., it really puts in perspective how fortunate we are to live in such a free country. So just having perspective, I grew up early. At 18, I became a man right away. So, and of course, meeting all the wonderful people I've served with, you just it was just such a wonderful experience and something that I'm extremely proud of.
Hmm. Yeah, and we appreciate you serving along with your wife and everything. I know we're going to talk a little bit about you being stationed, in other countries as well a little bit later on in the podcast. But I want to talk a little bit more about your family. I know you told me you had an oldest son who also played football in college. Does sports just run in the family?
Yes, of course. Like I said, I served. However, and my wife, she played a little softball in college and whatnot. However, um, we're very fortunate that we've had 3 wonderful, I say, children. My oldest son will be 33 here soon. you know, Jalen is 22, and our youngest daughter is about to turn 18 here soon. But my oldest son played college football in the MAC conference for Bowling Green several years back. So that was kind of our first introduction to college football. And of course, the landscape of college football changed quite a bit
Hmm.
since 2009. But we're obviously enjoying this ride with the Jalen. And then our daughter is a national cheer champion. So, yeah, our children have surpassed us athletically. So,
Yeah.
uh,
It's pretty cool that sports, just runs in the family. Like you said, your oldest son, then Jalen, and then also your daughter. So it's pretty cool that, sports is running in the family for sure. I do want to talk about a little bit about Jalen as well. You told me that he was born in Columbus, South Carolina, but when you and the family were stationed in Seoul, South Korea, that's when Jalen started to play football at the age of 5 up until he was 9 before you all moved back to South Carolina. What was that experience like for him along with you and your family?
it was great. My wife and I were on rapid deployment, so we kind of took a break from that and had an opportunity to serve in South Korea, where we took our 2 kids, Jalen and Janiyah. And back then they didn't have contact sports for youth. Um, so Jalen actually learned the game of football through flag football, which in retrospect was pretty good because he was able to learn and understand the components of football and team sports and being a great teammate without necessarily the ground and pound of the physical contact. So when we moved back to South Carolina when he was 9 years old, he began playing Pop Warner football. So he had a pretty good grasp of the fundamentals of just team sports and In football, he played basketball and soccer and baseball and everything. So it was a great experience, and it gave our children the culture. I think that served as a great foundation of who they are in terms of their character, commitment to team.
And how did you support him with his future with football in case he like did eventually play college football, which he did at or which he is currently at UK, but how did you support him along with the other family members?
Well, so I started out coaching Jalen his first several years. And then when we got back to the States, I thought it was very important that I kind of relinquish that duty as coach and just be a father and support him. And it was a very, you know, good transition coming back to the States, doing Pop Warner here in Columbia, South Carolina. And then as he got older, after I retired, I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to travel with him a lot. So Jalen was on the U.S. national team, Team USA. We're in eighth grade. He played for the national team against Team Canada in Cowboy Stadium.
Wow.
And then all of the football FBU camps and USA national team camps, he was really able to understand, how things work, competing against kids across the country. And I think that was a very important, developmental component for him. So when he got to high school, some of those nerves and jitters weren't as prominent because he was such an experienced young kid growing up in terms of, like I said, competing. So high school, it was, I'm almost say it's a smooth transition, but he started freshman. He started varsity as a freshman,
Oh.
playing cornerback. So, like I said, it was great to see the journey, and we're incredibly proud of his resilience and his growth and development over the
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, could you just talk a little bit more about the experience? I mean, maybe for him along with you, just talking about him being on the national team as well.
That was great because I mean, how many 13, 14-year-olds get a chance to play against another country in Cowboy Stadium, right?
Yeah.
So some pretty bright lights for most kids, regardless of age. But I would probably point to that experience to being kind of the cornerstone of his growth and development. Because even if you watch Jalen now, right, playing against whomever, Bama, Tennessee, it doesn't matter. He never gets too low or too high. And some of that can be attributed to his raising, kind of as a military child, if you will. But I think a good portion of that can directly speak to his experience, with the national team and other camps where he, like I said, was able to get integrated into the sport at a national and international level. So I think I tell a lot of parents, please, if you have the opportunity to expose, your child at levels to as big a stage as possible early on, because it would pay off in dividends as he gets older. Playing on ESPN in front of several million people, it doesn't bother him at all.
Mhm. Yeah, and then I know you also said that he was already playing varsity as a freshman in high school. Did you think he was eventually going to play football in college or potentially, play a different sport in college?
Well, what's crazy is Jalen's primary sport when he was younger was basketball. So he uh, was a better basketball player growing up than football if I had to choose between the two. My oldest son was a running back, so Jalen actually started out as a running back all the way up until high school. But we kind of made the decision collectively. Well, of course, it was his decision, but we supported him that he would just put his primary focus on developing as a football player. So playing cornerback as a freshman in varsity, he really was able to kind of cut his teeth early, playing in some pretty decent sized games early on.
Mhm.
So once he became a sophomore and a junior, we really knew that this was probably going to be his path, his journey as a football player. And if it's in God's plan, he'll continue to do that at Kentucky and then on, hopefully on Sundays.
Hopefully on Sundays, you're not wrong about that. And just speaking about guiding him, how did you all guide him through the recruitment process and then eventually where he committed to Kentucky?
Well, the good thing about that part of the journey is I was retired, right? So I had the fortunate opportunity to travel, right? So all of the required camps, if you will, that you know these young men go through. We were on the road a lot. I mean, and college visits. We take his whole spring break, and we just go check out schools or whatever the case may be his junior year, and it really opened his eyes, and it gave him the tools necessary to make an informed decision. So being down in South Carolina, I think Rivals had him as the number 2 defensive back in the class of 19. I think a lot of people just assumed that he would, commit to a school a little closer to home. However, and again, at the risk of sounding like a cliche, when we visited Kentucky, Coach Clink Scale and Coach Vince Merrill invited us and offered. Once he met Coach Stoops and the staff, he shut everything down after that.
Mhm.
I mean, there
And
were
I'll,
suitors. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
oh, my bad. No, you keep talking. I apologize.
No, 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 no. It's fine. So once he met Coach Stoops and the staff and saw that environment, that culture, and of course a lot of those coaches are from Ohio, so that was a big part for me because my family. I'm born and raised in Dayton, Ohio,
Hmm.
so I'm an Ohio guy. It all resonated with us as a family, being a military family, such a blue collar, honorable program. Proximity really wasn't an issue. He chose Kentucky. Kentucky chose him. And like I said, after that, he shut everything down. And even though we had suitors after he committed, he stayed true. He just wanted to focus on his senior year because he committed as a junior on
Hmm.
Mother's Day. And he wanted to stay focused on his senior year without the worries of recruiting. And he signed early, and everything else has been a blessing in the history here, being a part of the Big Blue family.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's so cool. My question I was about to say is what made him stay committed to Kentucky after Steve Clinkscale left Kentucky to go to Michigan?
Well, we always would tell him, even though it's tough because it's the human element of developing relationships with coaches, right? However, how fluid coaches can move and change, we committed to Kentucky as a program and not as a coach. And again, a lot of times, families and parents and kids will say that. And again, this is kind of, I don't say pre-transfer portal, but now it's a lot fluid, which is fine.
Yeah.
Transfer portal is great. But we committed to Kentucky, and that was something that he was very committed to from day one, and he never looked back. So we really appreciate Clinkscale coming to the house and eating dinner here. And Coach Clinkscale is a phenomenal coach. I mean, phenomenal. Um, but again, you hear a lot of people speak about the culture at UK, and it's very, very strong.
Mhm.
So it was for him. It was he just wanted to stay and develop, and I know again at the risk of sounding like a cliche, he just wanted to be the best teammate he could. And
Mhm.
he's played a cornerback. He's played so many different positions in the secondary. So it's good for him. It's good for the team.
Mhm. Yeah, and just continuing to talk about the coaches and everything, what has it been like for him to just learn under Brad White, the defensive coordinator at Kentucky?
I think in Brad White's former life, he probably was a military officer, right? Because he has such those attributes of a great leader. He's going to love on you hard, but he's going to kick you in the butt hard too. But he doesn't hold it against you. If you make a mistake, they fix it and they move on. And that is very important because we as parents, as military parents, we draw a lot of parallels to between the military um, and team sport.
Mhm.
So I mean, we were in a team sport. I'm not comparing combat to football, of course.
Yeah.
However, just having really good leaders and entrusting those leaders to kind of continue on what you did as a parent was very important to us. So I have a very open line of communication with Coach White, Coach Bafano, his current safeties coach. Coach Stoops. So going into our 5th year, we couldn't ask for a better coaching staff for our young man.
Yeah, and I'm glad you have a great connection to the coaching staff and everything. And just talking about Jalen Geiger playing college, football, what was it like for you and the family to see him get some playing time early on to his college? I mean, he played a little bit his freshman year and then also his redshirt freshman year as well.
It was surreal, right? I mean, like I said, we were fortunate to kind of experience a little bit with our older son, but this is kind of a different level. All due respect, to the MAC and other conferences. We all know SEC football is it's the best league in college ball, right? And I'm a Big Ten guy. I was raised as a Buckeye, so all due respect to the Big Ten other conferences, it was surreal seeing our son play. Um, for Kentucky first and foremost, and then seeing him on TV, seeing him play against some of the kids he grew up training with.
Mhm.
We're playing the Gamecocks or he had a couple high school teammates on Georgia Bulldog. So it's been such a wonderful chapter of our lives, all of us as a family, to see him playing the game he loved and at the biggest stage in college football. It's been phenomenal,
Mhm.
phenomenal, man.
Yeah, and speaking of a little bit more about Jalen, he started to get some more playing time his sophomore year. What did he see when he did make an impact on the field?
His sophomore year, it was a transition year for him because it's when he went from playing cornerback to safety, right, and nickel. So it was a transition year his sophomore year. He was learning. Unfortunately, his sophomore year was the COVID year,
Mhm.
so we all know how that went. It was kind of a unique time to be in college sports in general.
Mhm.
However, I think he really put it all together from an IQ perspective. His junior year, 21, playing nickel and strong safety. He kind of had his coming out party in some games against South Carolina, Mississippi
Mhm.
State, and others. So I think that kind of catapulted him in terms of his confidence, his football IQ, and I know we're talking X's and O's, but just having the understanding and the game slowed down a lot for him
Mhm.
going into his junior year. So, um, and again, it's been great for the teams, but it's been really good for him because his football IQ. I mean, he knows the entire secondary, so he's able to communicate and be a leader, vocally on and off the field.
Mhm. Yeah, and speaking of him being a leader, I know he actually got his first ever pick six against Vanderbilt. What was that like just for him and then you as a family?
And that was, man, it was a dream, right? And that was his first career start. So, uh, my wife is from Tennessee, just south of Nashville. So, uh, that was pretty cool to for them to have that opportunity. Because if you remember that game, you
Mhm.
know, unfortunately, the second half, we kind of reeled a little bit as a team. So just looking back, knowing that, his contribution that game kind of helped us win a football game
Yeah.
was even bigger than an individual accomplishment. So, and I know I keep preaching team here, but um, it was great, man. I mean, I still look at it today, time to time, when I'm,
Mhm.
having a slow day. I'll just put on the tape and,
I
you
hear
know,
you. Yeah. And then a little bit more. I mean, last year we all know Jalen Geiger, he was probably going to have a big year, but sadly he had that season-ending knee injury last year. What was it just like for you and the family just trying to support him during maybe a potentially a tough time in his life last year?
great question. So that was the first time Jalen has ever been injured in his life. So that was kind of uncharted territory for us. And like you said, he was ready for a big year, a quote unquote breakout year. Um, so what it did was it taught him to continue to be resilient. Um, Unfortunately, he had seen other teammates in the past suffer injuries, season-ending injuries. So he was very adamant about not let that define him, that he would come back even bigger, stronger, and faster. And it also gave him an opportunity to be a leader, more vocally supporting his team from the sideline. The first 7 weeks, I was up there with him after surgery, and we would watch the games, from his apartment, and he would text his teammates before and sometime during and after the games. But more importantly, it allowed him a little time to dive in the community. So we're very proud of Jalen as a football player. We're very proud that Jalen got his degree from University of Kentucky, but we've been more proud of his commitment to the community. So Jalen was up for 2 national community service awards, the AFCA and the Danny Warfel Award, with his involvement in the community. So that to us is more enduring than football or any sport he could play. So that planted a seed in him. He had already been involved in the community here in Columbia and even overseas, but just to see him continue to do that and not sit back and woe is me. And then again, I will have to say publicly, the medical and training staff at University of Kentucky was and is phenomenal. I mean, phenomenal. They took care of him. They went well above and beyond to ensure that he was taken care of physically and mentally. So I'm the quote unquote president of the University of Kentucky Football Parent Club. I have 220 parents I communicate with every week. And unfortunately, injuries are part of the game. So I'm able to convey that to other parents who are going through similar situations, that it's going to be a tough, road to recovery. However, we're very fortunate and blessed that Coach Stoops has a staff that is absolutely committed to ensuring that those young men have, a good road to recovery, like I said, and mentally and physically. So it
And
was
that's
tough, but we got through it.
Yeah, and that's crazy that you communicate with so many parents weekly. Could you talk a little bit more about just Jalen with his community work that he does that you were mentioning earlier?
Right. So, like I said, when he was younger, we would do things. We would take him along with us just to expose him, to broaden his horizons, if you will, in the community. And he did it here in Columbia, in the Miracle of the Midlands, or he would come home on break and he would do some things here. But we really wanted to kind of pay it forward for the Lexington community, the community in which he, lives in. So, and they were fortunate they were able to kind of cover it on the news, local news there in Lexington, with his efforts at Liberty Elementary. And so those relationships that he built, they're everlasting, right? So when we told him from day one, no matter how big you get, quote unquote, if you will, I know you're a public figure, but always remember that it's all about the community, the fans. And again, I think that, spoke volumes of his character. And I know I'm biased because that's my son, but again, we're incredibly proud of the young man he is. Because high character is going to take him beyond football. We all know that.
Yeah, and I'm glad you instilled that into him as a young kid and everything, and I appreciate that. I want to talk about the medical staff as well. You mentioned that earlier. He talked about this after his first game this year. He talked about how he had a special moment after recovering the fumble for a touchdown. He brought up that he talked to the medical staff, his doctor, and they almost shed a tear basically after that moment where he scored the touchdown from a fumble recovery. Did he bring that up to you at all?
Absolutely. And it was almost full circle because I remember clearly in Gainesville at the Swamp when this injury happened, and my wife and I were able to go down to the locker room and speak to Dr. Johnson. And he informed us that Jalen had ruptured his patella tendon, not his ACL, as a lot of people believe. But he assured us from right there in the locker room in Gainesville that he would take care of Jalen. And I mean, when I say he delivered, he delivered. He kept us informed. And again, Jalen was working out twice a day, every single day, 7 days a week. but it was such a effective means of communication because when you live 500 miles away, sometimes you could be in the dark if you don't have that open line of communication. So Dr. Johnson, his staff, Gabe, who's now with the Steelers, and his staff, they were phenomenal, man. I mean, they really took care of him. And the thing about it is they're very competent. It's one thing to have, the communication and the good warm and fuzzy feeling, but it's another thing to know exactly what you're doing. So Jalen literally, and then one more thing, Coach Ed and Mark and all those guys, the strength teams, man. I mean, Jalen is literally stronger than he's ever been in his life. And again, that's a testament to Jalen's commitment, but it's also a testament to the type of program that they run there at Kentucky. We will be forever, forever grateful to them for that.
Yeah, and we appreciate definitely the UK medical staff and everything. And I know Jalen's gone through a lot this past year for sure, but can you just talk about that special moment he had whenever he did recover the football for, getting the fumble recovery and then leading to a touchdown, scoop and score, of course. How big of a moment was that for everyone?
Well, the first thing I noticed that Dr. Johnson, which you rarely see, he tweeted that kind of the before and after pics, if you will, of Jalen going into surgery and then or him on the cart with Jalen in Gainesville, and then you flash forward to Jalen scooping and scoring. Just to be in the stands and to feel the energy, it was almost like the Big Blue Nation knew that was a special moment. I mean, we knew as a family, obviously, and my phone just, of course, blew up
Mhm.
from all my family and friends. But it really felt like Big Blue Nation cheered a little louder for that moment because he's been committed and loyal to the program. And again, it helped his team, because it's kind of at a point in the game where, we needed a spark and it was a team effort. It was Afari with the big hit,
Yeah.
and then Jalen was able to uh, take the teachings of Brad White and Coach Bafano. Loose balls, you better get on it. And he was just instinctively, uh, he took advantage of the opportunity to scoop, and no one was catching him.
Mhm.
no, no one was going to catch him, man. So we're taking that. We're just trying to
Mhm.
win the East, man. I mean, like we just again back to the cliche, but we want to win the East. So whatever we have to do as a family, Jalen as a teammate, to do so, I think is very important to him to be part of this special team.
Yeah, and I thought it was a very special moment. I know I messaged you immediately, basically right after that happened, just saying like this is a big moment for Jalen. I'm proud of him along with you and the family members because like I said, he's coming off a big injury and then very first game of the year he recovered that fumble for a touchdown.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that. Just know that we don't take those sentiments for granted. I mean, all the support from you and others alike really really meant a lot to our family. And it just reiterated to us that he's in a he's in a special place at UK. So um, yeah, it was a big moment, man, and we celebrated for 24 hours, maybe a little longer. It took a little time to respond to all of the wonderful text messages and phone calls. Uh, but now it's headed to Vandy, and he almost had a pick the first time he played there. He had a pick last time he played there, so we're going to try to keep that spirit alive when we go to Nashville this
Yeah.
week, and hopefully he'll get another pick.
Yeah, I hear you. And then one of my last questions I had, I know you said that UK they want to win the East and everything. What do you expect from Jalen and also the team this upcoming year?
So realistically speaking, I think, and kind of back to the portal, I think Kentucky, from a fan's perspective, has done a great job in the portal, right? We had a few missing pieces, maybe some things we needed to shore up and tighten up, and I won't go into specifics. But I think Coach Stoops and his staff addressed that this year. So I know it's taken a little, time to kind of get certain position groups aligned and get the chemistry going. Very grateful that Will Levis was a phenomenal quarterback, and I think Devin Leary is also phenomenal. And then we got Ray Davis, and we got receiving core, and the big blue wall is taking back shape. And then our defense is just, I think they're very special. I think it's the fastest defense I've seen Kentucky had in the last several years collectively, right? I know we've had the Josh Allens and Jamin Davis, and some very great individual players, but now from a collectively defensively, I think we're very fast. In some position groups, we might be a little young in terms of snap count at corner, but like Maxwell Harris and Andrew Phillips are playing phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
I am biased. I think we got the best safety core, definitely in the SEC, maybe the country. So, now is the time to kind of get things ramped up, going into SEC play. But I really like our chances um, of making a push for the East this year, man.
Mm-hmm.
I do. This
Mm-hmm.
is year 5 for us. I've seen it, and
Mm-hmm.
so I'm very candid. I'm being very honest with you. I think we have a great shot
Yeah.
of, shocking the world, if you will.
Yeah, and I think UK they have a great chance too, as especially after seeing the first 3 games of the year with Georgia and Tennessee struggling along with Alabama. So potentially Kentucky they have a chance to, win those games if they play a full game, and hopefully they will this upcoming year. I predicted 8-4 before the season started, and hopefully it's better than 8-4 for sure this upcoming year.
Yeah, and the good thing is, um, I think that it's great having Liam Cohen back. There's so many components I think sets us up for a really special year, so long as we take it game by game. And I know that is a cliche. However, we have to focus on Vanderbilt, not Florida, not Tennessee, Vanderbilt. We
Mhm.
take it game by game. We win in Vanderbilt, go 4-0, and then we, tackle the next opponent. So
Florida.
so long as we do that, I think we'll be in really good shape.
Mhm. Yeah, and I agree with you 100%. Do you have anything else you would like to add, Tony? I appreciate talking with you this evening, and I'll definitely get this podcast uploaded very soon.
No, I will add one more thing, and it's kind of not really football related, but you'll see here soon. We'll be back on BBN tonight, but I'm going to give a plug out to our Big Blue family, right? We have our second year of a UK football family tailgate, right? We've had a couple of hundred people the first 3 games.
Wow.
So I think when you hear Coach Stoops and his staff talk about family, and when Coach Vince Murrow and others and other coaches are in those living rooms talking to parents about how this is a family atmosphere, well, we kind of put our money where our mouth is, and so I really do believe that we have the best football family parent group in the country,
Mhm.
and our kids can focus a little more when they know that their parents are taken care of, and we have such a great time there. So um, it's a great time to be a UK football player, great time to be a UK football parent, and then, like I said, it's football time in the bluegrass, man. So let's beat Vandy
Mhm.
and go from there, man.
Let's beat Vandy for sure. I'm excited about this upcoming week. Do you have a score prediction real quick?
31-14. Um, I would almost go 38-14, but I'll say 31-14. I think the and again, all due respect, Vandy is a sneaky team. This is the SEC football team, so I really don't read a lot of quote unquote newspaper clippings. I'm
Mhm.
dating myself, um, but Vandy's a really solid team, and we're going to Vandy, and we lost to Vandy last year,
Yeah.
so we can never take anyone for granted. So that's why it's kind of revert back to how important it is for our team
Mm-hmm.
to focus on Vandy. So I'll say 31-14, maybe 31-10.
Yeah.
But I think we get going. We'll start fast and we'll stay fast.
Yeah. I think it'll be probably 34-14 Kentucky, but I think UK will definitely be 4-0 after this week. And I appreciate you again, Tony, for joining this podcast tonight. And hopefully Jalen Geiger will continue to have a great year this upcoming year and continue to do great things on the field and also off the field, as you mentioned previously.
Yes, sir, Chris. And again, thanks a lot for having me. It was a pleasure talking to you, man. And go Big Blue, man. Go Big Blue.
Go Big Blue. All right. This is the Big Blue News Podcast, and I'm Chris Beasmore signing out. Thank you all for watching and listening. We appreciate the viewership for sure.